Let me tell you something that still makes my blood boil even after all these years. I'm talking full-body goosebumps just thinking about it. This isn't some sob story, it's a straight-up war story, and I promise you, you won't believe what happened in the end. So rewind back to about 8 years ago. I had just opened my dream business, a cozy little bed and breakfast tucked into a quiet town where the only excitement came from the sound of crickets at night and the occasional wedding on the weekend. I had worked my butt off to get that place up and running. I mean blood, sweat, and ramen noodles for dinner levels of sacrifice. We were barely 3 months in, and let me be honest, I was struggling, like Rob Peter to pay Paul struggling. I had just lost my dad a few weeks before, and I was trying to be the rock for my mom, who was falling apart in slow motion. On top of that, my wedding was coming up in just 2 months, and we couldn't even afford the final payments to the venue yet. Every dollar felt like oxygen, and I was gasping. So when this new client called and said he needed to house a crew of workers for 6 days, offering to book out 4 rooms with dinner and breakfast included, I thought my luck had finally changed. I could feel the relief trickling down my spine as he said the words, "We'll get you on the system and pay you Friday." It sounded official, it sounded normal, it sounded like hope. I even pulled out my best linens and stocked up on breakfast supplies I could barely afford. I made home-cooked dinners every night like some overachieving innkeeper in a Hallmark movie. These guys weren't just workers, they were the miracle I'd been waiting for. But then Friday came, and it went, and guess what? No payment. I called the guy, let's call him Keith because of course his name was Keith, and he gave me some, "Oh, the payment system's delayed," excuse. I wanted to believe him because I needed to believe him. He promised to sort it out by Monday. Except Monday never came, not for me. Because when I woke up Sunday morning, something felt off. The parking lot was empty, their rooms were abandoned, towels tossed, beds unmade. I knocked on every door, hoping maybe they had just gone out early, but deep down, I knew, they were gone, vanished, like ghosts in a horror film. No checkout, no goodbye, no damn money. I stood in the middle of my tiny lobby, in my pajamas and slippers, holding a guest registry like it was a ransom note, just staring at the empty hallway as if my willpower alone could drag them back. Keith stopped answering my calls after that. He straight up ghosted me like a bad Tinder date. I tried everything, emails, texts, voicemails, all of it ignored like I didn't even exist. Meanwhile, I was stuck holding the bill for 6 days worth of food, water, electricity, and unpaid help. I had to take out a loan just to keep the lights on. And get this, because of Keith, I had to cancel my honeymoon. Yeah, that's right, I started my marriage drowning in debt, with a new wife and a mountain of financial stress hanging over us like a storm cloud no one warned us about. It took me years to pay it off, literal years of scraping by, missing out, postponing plans, and explaining to friends and family why we were always on a budget. The worst part? No one could help me. The police said it was a civil matter, and the lawyers I called just shook their heads when they heard how little the amount was compared to their fees. Small claims court would have cost me more than I had, and with no signed contract, just a paper trail of texts, I didn't stand a chance. I tried to move on, I really did. I tried to forgive, I tried to say, hey, it was a hard lesson, let it go. But every time I checked my empty bank account, every time I saw my mom cutting coupons so we could eat, and every time my wife cried quietly in the bathroom thinking I couldn't hear her, something inside me snapped a little more. That's when I made a decision. If Keith thought he could just disappear and leave me broken, he had no idea who he was messing with. Because I wasn't going to let it go. No, sir. I was going to make sure he remembered me for the rest of his life. And trust me, you won't believe what I did next. You ever have that moment where you're lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, and your mind just won't shut up? That was me, every night, for months, and the only thing I could think about was Keith, that smirking, lying, vanishing piece of garbage who walked out on his bill like it was pocket change. I couldn't let it go, I just couldn't. Every time I passed by the guest rooms he trashed or got a notice about a bill I was late on because of him, the anger just boiled higher. I wasn't just mad, I was focused, and that's when a twisted little idea popped into my head during one of those 3 a.m. spiral sessions. What if I gave him a taste of that same sleepless stress? So I grabbed my phone, set an alarm for 2:57 a.m., and the moment it rang, I dialed his number, private. When he didn't answer, I let it ring until it went to voicemail, no message, just the ring, and then I did it again the next night, and the next, and the next. I was like a ghost in the wires, haunting his sleep just like he haunted mine. And when I'd get up to pee in the middle of the night, you bet I'd make another call, 2 seconds, ring, hang up, ring again, over and over, week after week. I became his 3 a.m. alarm clock from hell. After about a month, the number stopped working. Guess he changed it. But see, by then, I was already past the point of just making him lose sleep. I wanted to crawl into every part of his life and make him feel me there, like a shadow he couldn't shake. So I took that old phone number, and his email address, yes, I still had it saved from the booking, and I started registering him for everything, and I mean everything. I'm talking every spam newsletter I could find, sketchy sweepstakes sites, questionable dating platforms, fitness scams, and yes, adult content. If a website had a sign up for more info box, Keith was getting all the info. Within days, I imagined his inbox exploding with, "Congratulations, you've been selected," and "Get longer now," and "Join our singles in your area," typed garbage. I pictured him opening his email in the morning with bloodshot eyes and just sitting there in stunned silence as 3,000 unread messages screamed for his attention. But I didn't stop there. Oh no, this was just the pre-game warm-up. I started leaving reviews, and I mean reviews, every business listing tied to his name. 1 star, I used his full name, the name of his business, and detailed exactly what he did to me. Beware, I'd write, "This man scams small business owners and vanishes without paying." I even created burner accounts so I could hit multiple platforms, Yelp, Google, TripAdvisor, Facebook. If he had a digital footprint, I was stomping all over it. And I kept checking back to make sure the reviews stuck. If one got taken down, I'd rewrite it a little differently and post again. I was relentless, I was surgical, I wasn't playing checkers, I was playing emotional chess, and I was 10 moves ahead. You won't believe what I found one night while checking his Facebook page. He posted a picture of himself at some barbecue, grinning like life was great, and what did I do? I commented right there, in bold capital letters, "This man is a thief who left without paying a small business owner." That post went up at noon. By 5 p.m., it was gone. By the next day, his profile was set to private. But I wasn't done with him, not by a long shot. Because see, when someone makes their profile private, their friends list is still public, and I clicked through every one of those names, every aunt, every cousin, every coworker, every buddy from high school, and I messaged all of them. I told them the story, politely, honestly, just the facts. "Hi, sorry to bother you. I just wanted you to know that your friend Keith stayed at my bed and breakfast, racked up a huge bill, and then disappeared without paying a cent. It nearly cost me my business." Some ignored me, a few apologized on his behalf. One guy even said, "Yeah, I've heard stuff like that about him before." That was when I knew, this wasn't just revenge, this was justice. I started Googling his business again, just to see if my reviews had done anything, and sure enough, a few months later, I saw a post that his office was closed, for renovations, another couple weeks. That post vanished too, then the whole site was offline. I couldn't be sure if it was all because of me, but the timing was just too perfect. But it didn't stop there, nope, because once I knew his business address, I had another idea. And I swear, what I did next might have gone too far, but at the time, I didn't care. Because in my mind, I wasn't just ruining a man's life, I was reclaiming mine. And if you think this was bad, oh man, just wait till you hear what I did to his neighbors. You ever hit a point where you're not even mad anymore, you're just committed? That's where I was. At that point, it wasn't about the money Keith owed me anymore, it was about the principle. It was about the fact that when I was at my absolute lowest, grieving my dad, drowning in debt, planning a wedding we couldn't afford, he didn't just steal from me, he kicked me while I was down, and I don't care who you are, you don't walk away from that clean. So once I confirmed his business website had gone dark and his personal profile was locked up like Fort Knox, I shifted my attention to a new target, his neighborhood. That's right, I went local. See, I'd remembered the address he used when he booked my B&B, had it saved on a check-in form, It was a commercial spot in a mid-sized city about 4 hours from me. I took that address, plugged it into Google, and did a street view walk like I was scouting a battlefield. And what did I find? A row of small businesses right next to his: cleaners, boutiques, a vape shop, a hair salon, the kind of places where owners know each other by name and look out for one another, you know, the exact kind of people who hate being associated with criminals. So I made a list. I got names, phone numbers, even a few emails when I could. Then I started calling. "Hi, I know this is unusual, but I wanted to warn you about someone in your neighborhood. There's a man named Keith who owns a shop down the block from you. He scammed me out of a large bill when I was running a small B&B, completely ghosted me and never paid, just walked out in the middle of the night and left me with nothing. I thought you should know, especially if you're doing business with him." Some were polite, some were stunned, a few hung up the moment I said, "Scam." But one guy, a barbershop owner, actually laughed and said, "Man, you too. You too. You too." That was the moment I realized Keith didn't just do this to me, he made a habit out of being a parasite. Now I had a mission. I kept calling, one by one. Over the course of a couple weeks, I hit every business in a 2-block radius. I left voicemails when no one picked up. I didn't scream or curse or threaten, I just told the truth, calm, measured, and full of conviction. And I didn't stop there. Because you won't believe what else I did next. I started mailing flyers. Yes, flyers. I made a simple printout, Keith's full name, his business name, and a short paragraph explaining exactly what he did to me. I included words like fraud, theft, and unpaid debt, nothing libelous, all true, all provable, just a story of a small business owner being cheated during one of the hardest times of his life. I mailed one to every business on the street, I mailed one to the Chamber of Commerce, I even mailed one to the building owner, just in case he was renting. My goal wasn't just to ruin his reputation, I wanted to isolate him, I wanted everyone around him to keep their distance like he was radioactive. And just when I thought I was done, I got curious. I checked his business name again, and wouldn't you know it, he had a Better Business Bureau profile, and it was clean. Well, not anymore. I wrote a complaint so detailed, so carefully worded, it practically read like a legal affidavit, and then I posted that same story anywhere else I could find: a review page, Reddit, rip-off report, local forums, community Facebook groups in his town. If someone searched his name, I wanted my voice to be the first thing they heard. And you know what happened? About 2 months later, a friend of mine who lived near Keith City texted me a photo. It was a handwritten sign on the door of Keith's shop, closed until further notice. No explanation, no apology, just, gone. And that's when it hit me, I'd done it. I hadn't just fought back, I'd buried him in digital fire and word-of-mouth wildfire. I didn't lift a finger to hurt him physically, I didn't break any laws, but I had dismantled his world one piece at a time. But here's the thing. Even after all of that, the calls, the spam, the reviews, the flyers, I still wasn't satisfied. Because the damage he did to my life was permanent, the money he stole took years to recover from, and even though I was finally stable, finally thriving, there was a part of me that still burned for more. So I decided to go personal. And trust me, you won't believe who I reached out to next. So by this point, I'd pretty much destroyed Keith's business from every angle I could find. He'd ghosted me and left me scrambling to feed myself, bury my dad, support my mom, and plan a wedding I could barely afford. So yeah, I didn't lose a single second of sleep tearing down everything he'd built, but after all that, I realized something that kept me awake at night anyway. I still hadn't hit him where it really hurt. Because for a guy like Keith, the type who wears knockoff Rolexes and brags about networking, image is everything, his online reputation gone, his neighborhood credibility shot. But I started wondering, what about the people closest to him? The ones who still believed he was a good guy. That's when I decided to start reaching out to his friends and family. Now let me be real clear here, I wasn't trying to ruin innocent lives. This wasn't about dragging people into something they had nothing to do with, but Keith had burned me so thoroughly, so completely, that I needed him to feel the heat in his own home, and I made sure to do it in a way that was clean, calm, and calculated. I started with Facebook. Even though his profile was locked up tight, he hadn't unfriended everyone, and his list of mutuals gave me just enough leads. I started messaging people one by one. "Hi there, I'm really sorry to bother you, but I'm reaching out because I saw you're connected to Keith. I just thought you should know he left me thousands in debt after using my BNB for nearly a week without paying, right before my wedding and after I lost my father. He never answered another call or message. I don't know if you're close to him, but I wanted to give you a heads up in case he tries to do the same to someone else." Simple, honest, no threats, no screaming, just the truth. Some ignored me, some said, "Whoa, I haven't talked to Keith in years." But a few wrote back, and one of them, a woman named Laura, wrote something that made me stop breathing for a second. "He told us you were lying, that you were trying to extort him." Extort him? The man stole from me and then ran like a coward, and now he's spinning it like I'm the con artist. That was the moment the fire in my chest came roaring back. If he wanted to paint me as a scammer, I was going to repaint him as the villain in his own life story. So I doubled down. I reached out to his mom, found her through a tagged photo from a wedding years back. I sent her the same message, told her everything. I didn't accuse or insult, I just laid it out. Her son cost me years of financial pain, and the only thing I wanted was for people to know the truth. She never responded. But you won't believe what happened next. One of his old coworkers messaged me 2 days later, someone named Tyler who used to work on the same contract team that stayed at my BNB. "Dude, I had no idea he stiffed you, we all thought he paid, we gave him the cash to cover the booking." I remember handing it to him. My hands were shaking reading that message. They gave him the money, Keith had the cash in his hand, and instead of passing it on to me, like he promised, he pocketed it and left us in the dust. He didn't just skip out on a bill, he straight up stole money from his own crew. And that, my friend, was the key I'd been looking for. With Tyler's permission, I screenshotted the message and started sending it to every person I'd previously messaged, even the ones who didn't answer. It changed everything. Suddenly, people were responding, apologizing, swearing they'd never talk to him again. One woman even told me she was Keith's ex and she wasn't even surprised, said he once tried to write off a charity donation that he never made. And then came the final blow. Keith's brother, a guy named Dan, messaged me and said, "I've been trying to track him down too, he owes me $6,000 from a failed startup." I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes, just stunned. This man didn't just wrong me, he left a trail of hurt behind him like a tornado in cowboy boots, and now I had allies, people who used to have his back, now turning their backs. He lost business. He lost friends. He lost family. And I didn't have to lift a finger in violence or shout a single angry word to make it happen. All I did was tell the truth, over and over again, until no one could pretend he was the good guy anymore. But just when I thought the story was winding down, you won't believe who walked into my BNB, 8 years later, and changed everything. I thought the saga was over. After 8 long years of relentless payback, phone calls, bad reviews, mailers, messages to friends, and watching his business crumble, I finally felt like I'd evened the score. My own business had grown strong, I'd paid off the loans, my mom was doing better, and my wife and I had just bought our first house. Life was finally moving forward. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs just when you think the game's over. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon, and business was slow. I was in the kitchen of my BNB, sipping coffee and restocking snacks for the next round of guests. That's when the front door creaked open and the bell above it rang. I dried my hands on a towel and walked out to greet whoever it was. And I swear to you, my heart nearly stopped. There, standing in the foyer with a dripping suitcase and a sheepish look on her face, was a teenage girl, maybe 17 or 18, and a woman who looked just a few years older than me. The woman stepped forward. "Hi, I hope this isn't weird, but, is your name Alex?" I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. She took a deep breath. "I'm Keith's ex-wife, and this is his daughter, Sophie." "I'm not kidding, My brain blanked out for a full 3 seconds, like someone had yanked the audio cable from my internal sound system. I just stared at them. She kept going, "I know who you are, I know what happened, and, we're not here to cause trouble, we're here because she wanted to meet you." I looked down at the girl, Sophie, and for a second, all I could see was the pain I'd carried for so long, but then I saw something else: sadness, confusion, and maybe even, respect. I finally found my voice. "Why me?" She looked right at me and said, "Because you're the only person who ever stood up to him." Turns out, Keith had painted a fake life for years. He lied to his daughter, lied to his wife, told them he was a self-made man, a victim of jealous competitors, a business owner who just had bad luck, but after his world collapsed, the phone calls, the reviews, the neighbors turning their backs, the cracks started to show. Eventually, the truth bled through. Sophie got curious and started digging. She found my reviews, my posts, even a few of the old messages floating around, and instead of running from it, she leaned in. She didn't come to defend her dad. She came to understand what kind of man he really was. We sat at the table for over an hour. I told her everything: the booking, the lies, the pain. I didn't sugarcoat it, but I didn't go out of my way to hurt her either. I just told her the story, my story. And when I was done, she said something I'll never forget. "You're not just the guy he stole from, you're the guy who finally made him face consequences." Before they left, her mother pulled me aside and quietly thanked me, not just for being honest, but for breaking the illusion, because after my storm hit Keith's life, she finally saw who he was and left him for good. She got full custody, she rebuilt. And now? She was just trying to give her daughter a chance to learn from the truth, even if that meant staring it straight in the face. I stood there on the porch as they drove away, rain still drizzling, but the sky cracking open with a little sunlight. That was the moment I finally let it all go. The anger. The need for revenge. The endless burning question of, will he ever pay for what he did? Because I realized he already had, not just in lost money or closed shops, but in losing the one thing he could never buy back. His legacy. See, when someone like Keith steals from you, it's not just about dollars and cents, it's about dignity, it's about how much someone can take from you before you start to disappear inside your own pain. But I didn't disappear. I fought back, with words, with truth, with persistence, and I built something stronger in the process. And now? Every time I walk through my B&B, every time I see a family checking in or a couple sipping wine on the porch, I smile, not because revenge made me happy, but because I survived him. Because I won. And you better believe I'll never forget the man who tried to ruin me, and how I made sure the world never forgot him either.